All right, a very good afternoon. First of all, I do have to apologize that this is starting later than we had mentioned earlier, but thankfully we get to kick off this episode of Election Watch. My name is Ifunaya, and had mentioned earlier that I was going to be having a conversation with the Labour Party Gubernatorial Candidate, Gbadebo Rhodes-Vivour, and he is in the studio.
Good afternoon, Lagos. Thank you for having me.
Good
Happy
afternoon.
to be here.
And we are glad that you're here.
Yes.
Okay, so let's jump into it because we should have started this earlier.
Yeah.
So I think the best place to start is, are you Lagosian enough to run for this office as governor of Lagos State?
Well, my history and pedigree in Lagos is without controversy. It goes back over 250 years. And these are people that have served public service and have made history positively for the people of Lagos State and Nigeria as a whole. And it's actually quite unfortunate that most of the people that are asking these questions are not from Lagos, right? They're not indigenes of Lagos. Mr. Sanwo-Olu is from Ogun State. His deputy is from Ogun State. But that's even besides the point. Lagos State has always been a melting pot for a very long time. Even when the Oba of Benin sent people here, you had people that were already here, right? And that's the culture of Lagos that makes it a welcoming state. And that's why it became the commercial capital of Nigeria. But unfortunately, when you have a governor that has dodged debate several times and has been given a chance to actually account for his stewardship of the state, and they've not really made any effort to come to the people and answer those questions, they then want to muddy the waters with this whole tribal conversation. But then you find that indigenes of Lagos, as far back as any, Funshaw Williams' pedigree is on question in Lagos. His wife was from Arundi Zogu, right? My grandfather was a judge. His first son crossed the Niger. His only daughter crossed the Niger. We are people that see people for who they are and appreciate that. And that's why Nnamdi Azikwe's biggest supporters were Obadinja Adili, right? Lagos indigenous families that, appreciated the value that he brought. So we're not tribalistic people. And that's why a man like Faleke from Kogi, or a man like Eric Beshola from Oshun, or a man like Bola Ahmed Tinubu from Oshun, all these people could find a place here and actually benefit from the goodness of Lagos State.
I like the fact that you've mentioned very rightly that Lagos is a melting pot, and you've gone ahead to describe in so many ways, and that brings us to the issue of the population explosion that we're seeing. We've seen that Lagos has been estimated at about 24 million people right now, and I believe the increase is about 3.2% per annum. And there's several reasons why people are coming here. The rural to urban migration, as well as the natural increase where there are more people giving birth right now compared to the number of people dying. And with that issue being of concern, if you get into this office as governor, do you intend to directly address the issue of the population explosion, or are you going to address the different facets that this is affecting?
You see, I think it's lazy thinking to blame the inefficiency of Lagos planning on a population explosion, because the revenues that Lagos celebrates, that makes Lagos this behemoth of a state, comes from the people. It's not coming from angels, it's not coming from the air, it's not coming from oil. It's coming from revenue that's generated by the people. So Lagos State is very poorly planned. Lagos State is very poorly designed. When you look per square kilometer and in relation to density, you find that Lagos State is actually underpopulated.
Interesting.
Right? Yes, because the kind of efficiency that you have with design is in the interlocking of your streets, providing a certain kilometers of road for every 1,000 people that you have, right? Creating a situation where your mega city is truly mega, not just in population, but in the transportation network, intermodal transportation systems. I mean, when you go to the Badagry division, you see huge lands that are unoccupied. The same thing, you go to Ekpe, huge lands that are unoccupied. And Lagos State can actually start to spread up and partner with Ogun State, partner with Oyo State to create developments that go upwards. But instead, they keep developing into the water, which is extremely expensive and it's not inclusive, because they want to create a Dubai. But how many Lagosians or Nigerians can afford to live in Dubai or even travel to Dubai? You see, so this idea of development needs to be redefined. Quality development is one that carries everybody along, and there's inclusivity. And decentralizing our design. You see, for instance, every morning you're seeing people in one-way traffic coming to the island. In the night, one-way traffic going back. On this axis, on this corridor, you're seeing people going from Central, going down into Lagos East, the Bejuleke axis and the Ajah axis. This is also poor design, right? So for us, what we're going to do, we're going to expand developments in Lagos East by designing a belt road that goes all the way from Oniru to Bejuleke on one side, on the other side Ikorodu all the way to Ekpe, and then link them by 6-kilometer bridges at their shortest intervals. So you've created a belt design that's interwoven and interlocked, similar to what you see in London, where you have the bridges, 52 bridges connecting, or even more, I think 52 bridges connecting over River Thames, right? So that allows for an interknitted transportation system. So these are some of the factors that we're going to be ensuring that we deliver.
Yeah, I like that you've identified when it comes to the roads and the bridges, but what about the housing? Because from what I do recall is that Lagos is yet to meet 50% of its housing demand.
Yes.
So how do you intend to, especially where we've seen very recently in the real estate market, it's become very active, especially from the private sector, but they still cannot meet the demand. So what difference would you being in office make if we're already having this activity from the private sector?
Yes, so as an architect, the only architect running this race, I'm uniquely positioned to solve this problem. And for me, we're layering that on the transportation network that I just spoke about, so that you then open up Lagos East and Lagos West, so that not everybody is doing developments in Lagos Central anymore. By the time you open that, the cost of construction on this axis is much cheaper than Lagos Central. So it reduces the cost of construction, and that should translate to the cost of rents in those areas. And then it now makes it okay to live in Ikorodu and then come by in an industrial ferry that will be able to ply our waterways, because we've done the dredging of our waterways. So you can come from Ikorodu to Lagos Island in 45 minutes, right? And then once you start investing, so we're going to have a social housing fund that's transferred from the heavy funding that we get from the expensive development, right? We transfer that into social housing, and then we'll also make it extremely important for you to get planning approval. There must be a part of your development that carries multi-income housing. So at least 3 or 4 units in your housing model, and this is standard practice all across the world, because you want inclusive developments. You don't want a situation where you are developing and it's like, oh, let the people that are not as rich as me stay away from me. No, because then creates a certain type of society that's not in your interest. So there is that. We're also going to build buildings, and then purpose-built buildings. There are a lot of young people that need to be close to work. They don't necessarily need a 2-3 bedroom apartment. In Japan, they have capsule hotels, right? Capsule buildings where you have a bed, you have a desk, right? So you just want to lay your head after working hard and be able to work at night. And that's what we're going to build a lot of. We're going to repurpose a lot of buildings that have been abandoned and create affordable housing in that regard. And people can pay monthly and can be tied directly to their salary. So it's multi-income housing, not necessarily affordable housing. And then when we build the larger affordable housing units, what we're going to do is offer it based on a lottery. So you might pay 150 to 200,000 naira to get into it, but then it will be openly given out based on a lottery. And you that come to stay there, it's not your own. You stay there for as long as you need it. Once you're done with it, you return it back to the government to give it back on a need basis. So we have a database of people that are unemployed, underemployed, the income that they are getting, and we're tagging this to the BVNs that they have, so that we know on a need basis who are the people that need these things and are eligible to it. And you can get into this if you're a member of the Commonwealth of Lagos. You become an automatic member of Commonwealth of Lagos if you pay taxes informally or formally. Because what we have to realize is the informal people are paying almost 40% of their income, right? And a huge amount of money is being generated in all of these markets, but there are no direct benefits to it, right? So these are some of the things that are put in place to ensure that affordable housing is more accessible, and we also incentivize developers as well, developing all these other areas. But they will naturally do so if we can make Lagos interconnected much better.
Now, just speaking about the housing. Yes, it would be great to have these new projects to address the housing deficit. but the existing structures that we have, because I recall that last year, and I had to heavily report on that we had several building collapses in Nigeria, particularly in Lagos. It was about 20, right? And just digging deep into it, there's several facets that we could tie to the issue. Is it the issue of substandard material? Is it the issue of a lack of proper planning? Is it the issue of lack of proper, assessment of the projects that they have? So I want to know, if you're coming in, you're going to, and according to what you've said, you're going to work on these projects to address the deficit. But what about the existing projects that we have? How do you intend to address that?
We're going to declare a state of emergency on existing structures, right? Because, and also, the main problem here is the corruption in the planning approval process.
Okay.
Now, if you have to grease the hands of so many people to get planning approval, those people don't have the moral rights to come and check on the buildings that you're doing, right? And that is why you see a lot of issues where people got planning approval for 6 stories, but they built 10, and a lot of people were just quiet. Why? Because they've shared money. So the idea is to create a planning approval system that is very removed from human interference, right? And as an architect, I know that I can submit a planning design, and AI can actually look at that design and say, this meets the requirements for this place based on zoning. It's coding, right? It's for you to get planning approval, you must have windows on 2 sides, you must have a bathroom here. There are rules, and these things can be programmed, so you don't have to deal with human interfacing, right? So reducing human interfacing as much as possible so that whole corruption system does not exist, and then the state has the right to then come down on you very heavy when you flout it. You find that people that have projects that destroy or take the lives of people that are poor, right, and they are poor themselves, the law works on that very quickly. But the rich that have buildings that collapse, no, they just fly away, and those lives are gone. So we're going to declare a state of emergency on the existing infrastructure to check and make sure that these buildings are standing and they're up to the task and their infrastructure is in good condition. And then we're going to make it a more rigorous planning approval process that takes the corruption away from it, so that those people can actually be held to a higher standard.
What you've mentioned, you've pointed out a major issue in some of the systems that we've experienced as Nigeria, which is the issue of racketeering.
Yes.
Because you mentioned that, there's corruption in the system. People might have collected money, they're keeping quiet, and so it's like they're all in cahoots.
Yes.
Now, this takes me to people questioning, you as a representative of the Labour Party, we do understand that in Nigeria, it's like we practice identity politics, right? And, people are very loyal to their political parties. It would be better if it's more an idea, or it's more nation focused. If you're coming into office, you're thinking about the collective, benefits and interests of the people. But unfortunately, it's not. It's more of a, it's my party. I want to continue what my predecessor, started or whatever the case might have been. Now, if you are representing the Labour Party and you intend on occupying this position, there are people that are wondering if you're going to get the help that you need from within. There are people saying that it will be nice if the Labour Party had more representatives already in the system. And so I want to ask you, if you get into this office and it's a case where you do not have a lot of your Labour Party representatives occupying positions within the system, how do you intend to make these changes that you've, very much clearly explained to us?
So, you know that the governor is supported by the State Assembly, and our elections are on the same day. So we have a full set of State Assembly members, and I expect to have a solid flush when we contest, right?
Okay.
So I'll have a good amount of State Assembly members for the Labour Party. And when you talk about the civil service, it's unfortunate that this government has so politicized the civil service. I mean, when you go and look at the local government building and they are draping their campaign banners on the local government office, I know it has become normalized to us, but that is something that is so appalling, because we must separate governance from the politics of it. Because by not separating it, you're creating a conflict of interest. For instance, now you hear that they've called all the civil servants and they're threatening them that, if they don't deliver their awards or all of that, they'll be sacked or they'll have a lot of problems. A lot of pressure is being put on them, and that's not how it's supposed to be. Civil servants are supposed to be servants of whatever leader is in office, right? And they're supposed to be depoliticized. But for me, the focus is on leading by example. You want a system that is not corrupt, you cannot be corrupt. You want a system where civil servants are working very hard and ensuring that your vision is being put in place. You must pay them well. Okay. Not a minimum wage, but a living wage. You must increase their capacity. So all the people that are afraid that I will come and fire civil servants, that is a lie. I come from Labour Party. We believe in labor. We believe in dignity of labor. We believe in workers' rights. But the main focus is that we must be on the same page for the betterment of Lagosians' lives. And we'll do this by also improving their lives and ensuring that they're on the path to actually living a middle-class life, right? By giving them access to student loans for their kids, by giving them paying their pensions on time, by ensuring that they also have access to health insurance that works, that's comprehensive, by giving them access to affordable housing as well, giving them the perks that allows for them to actually focus and say, you know what, let us serve and serve properly, right? So, I mean, another skill that politics gives you is the ability to form consensus, to be all things to all men. And I don't believe that I will not be able to work with any of these people. I feel that once they understand that the things have changed, the rules of the game have changed, and I engage with them, we're off to a good start. And you see, it'll be harder for me to achieve any of these things I'm saying if I actually came to the APC. I mean, look at what happened to Ambode. He had visionary ideas. The fact of the matter is you can look and say, Ambode did this, Ambode started this. It was under Ambode's government that I saw fire was burning somewhere, and my friend called the fire service and they came. That was the first time I saw it. It was under his government. The same week, Sonlu was showing trucks that he commissioned, fire trucks. If you recall, there was a building on fire in VI that literally for 5-6 hours no fire truck came. So you see that it's just tokenism. They take pictures to make the headlines, but in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness of these things, they're not anywhere to be seen. So for me, it's about ensuring that we carry the people along, ensure that the civil service is working at optimal form, and actually working and communicating with them.
So you made mention, student loans, and I would like for us to delve into education. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have one of the highest number of out-of-school children in the world, and this is something that we're battling with currently. And with the case of education, we recall that the UNESCO had mentioned that for any nation to thrive, they have to sequester about 15 to 26% of their budget towards education. And this is on a national level, of which, unfortunately, we've not been able to do. Now, just narrowing it down to state level, right? What do you intend to do to address the issue of the poor quality, because it's multifaceted, right?
On
so
several levels.
The poor quality education that we've seen for a very long time in Nigeria. It's not just because I wouldn't sit down here and tie it to just one political party. This is something that we've seen year after year after year, and tenure after tenure. So what do you intend on doing? Because people come and they tell us, and one of the things that they do is to share their manifesto, which always includes education. So how do you practically, on a practical note, how do you intend to address the education issue?
Okay, so first we must start from the primary caregivers of care to these kids. So the mothers, we must be carried along in policy formulation. So we must have a database of the single mothers in society. There are men that just up and leave their wives that have 3-4 children. And you imagine that these women will be in the right mental state to be able to wake up in the morning and put those kids, take them to school. Very difficult. In those situations, they need support. And that's why a social safety net has to come in. But first, you must get that data. And it must be acceptable to get that data in a loving way. And that's why I keep going back to love. And this will be domiciled at our local government level, right? So welfare workers must come into the system. Now, once we've cleared that up, you now have to look at the ratio of teachers to children. a lot of times you have schools where there are 80 children to one teacher. There's only so much you can ask of a human being. You take care of all those children. So you see that a lot of them then fall out. That's where it starts. They start to fall out. They're not doing well in school. They're not really engaging. They're not being engaged. You find most of the time they don't spend time with their friends. They fall out, and then that's how you start the beginning of the Agbero journey, right? So we need to reduce the ratio of teachers and students, and we need to increase the amount of teachers in our system. We need to radically employ a lot more teachers, improve teacher training, improve their capacity, and balance it with best standard models. We need to change our syllabus and the way we teach. Children are still being told that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. When the ancestors were bathing in that river, when the Europeans were probably still in the caves. Right? We need to change that. We need to make education more applicable. We need to make education about problem solving. And we're going to model that after the Nordic countries. Right? They look at teaching based on problem solving. So if there is a problem, how does knowledge from chemistry help solve that? How does knowledge from math help solve that? So you have practical knowledge that allows you to create a whole generation of problem solvers. And after school programs as well. It doesn't just finish in school. If after school programs, how do you now apply all this knowledge that you've gotten? When I was in school, we used to memorize what a beaker looks like, what a test tube looks like. And we don't have the applicable, teaching education should be fun. When I was at MIT, there was a focus on mind and hand. No matter how smart you are, you must make it with your hand. So they give you all the equipment that you need, laser cutters, 3D printers. These are the kind of fab labs that will be domiciled at local government level. So it must be okay and cool to go and train and learn. And when you give them the skills, you'll be surprised what will come out of it. So going to education now. Ensuring that education is exciting, interesting. The ratio of students, teachers are dramatically reduced to meet UNESCO levels about 1 to 30. Investing in our education system, so meeting that goal of 25 to 27% on education, extremely important to me. After school programs, and also lifelong learning, because it's not just about you in school, it's also about your parents, your uncles, your aunties. Giving them that exposure will also pay back on how they take care of their children. When people are exposed, there's a way that they also raise their kids. So this is all, and practical knowledge. So it also goes to vocational services. It's no more okay to just be a carpenter. It's time for you to become a craftsman. Now, what kind of equipment do you need for that? How does the state bring that into being? So you have a lab, a workshop where you can go and rent these things at a very low cost. So you can do more detailed work. You can finish work better that can potentially be exported. So these are the places that we need to get to, and this is the place we need to go. Education is a continuum. There's mental health education, right? There is education about emotional intelligence, right? And this does not have to be, we are going to teach about emotional intelligence. It's how you weave it into education. There's education about history. And history is something that you use to program the qualities that you want to see in the leaders and the members of your society. What are you celebrating in your history? What stories are you teaching? How many issues are you sweeping under the carpet because you don't want to engage? How many people really teach about the Biafra War? And that's why you see them that every election is still, they use it to bait. They use that divisiveness to bait. And people get away with it because a lot of people have not understood the history, right? What kind of people do you want to, what kind of moral values do you want to celebrate? You have Herbert Macaulay that was born into one of the most elite families in Nigeria at the time. But at a point, he went to go and fight the British and took the side of the market woman. These are stories that should be told from these are the kind of citizens that we want. Stories of the NSAS protesters. You cannot then muddy the waters and talk about how BRT buses were burnt. Yes, that happened. But that happened in the aftermath of somebody giving an order that they don't answer who gave the order, right? There were young men that stood and they wrapped themselves up in the flag and were singing an anthem because they believed when the military see them singing that anthem, they will not shoot, right? And that you cannot be more patriotic than that. These are stories we must tell. It cannot be swept under the carpet, right? So education is all these facets in molding the minds of the scions of a new Lagos and a new Nigeria. So it's extremely important to me.
And before we get into the conversation of the NSAS that you just brought up, just a bit more about education. Acknowledging that there are several schools today that are running in Lagos that are unregistered.
Yes.
If I take you back to 2016, I do recall that the government had set out at the time to shut down over 10,000 schools because they were unregistered.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that these schools exist, it means that it's meeting a demand.
Exactly.
So if there are schools that are unregistered at the moment, this shows that there's a possibility that they're not going according to whatever standards it is at the moment that, the state government might have provided.
Yes.
So it could be a good thing, it may not be a good thing,
Exactly.
who knows. So I want to know from you, if you get into this position, what happens to those thousands? I don't know how many there are at the moment,
Yes.
but there are so many. Even speaking about one of the collapsed buildings,
Yes.
throwing back.
And they killed two kids or three
unfortunately,
kids,
that building was housing a school
Yes.
that was unregistered.
Exactly.
So what then happens to these unregistered schools?
You see, the system that this government runs is very akin to a mafia government. The idea of just shutting down things as opposed to looking at them as stakeholders that I can partner with, right? What is the process of registration that will make the people come and look for you to register because there are benefits to it? Imagine if you set up a school, we are willing to come and train your teachers. No, but the state government will be oversubscribed because people will be looking, please come and train our teachers, right? Come and bring this level of quality to us, because now people will be looking to see how has Lagos certified you. Are you certified by Lagos State? Does Lagos State have rankings on schools per local government to say these are the top schools in this local government, go to these schools? Because we are monitoring, we are supervising, and there's oversight. So people look to us to say, we recommend these schools for this and this reason. Who's collecting data on these schools? But guess what? They want to shut down. And when you go to come and shut down, they'll close your gates. You give them money, they open your gate back again. So that's why people don't even respect them enough to seek this registration, right? And these are the things that need to change. Government must be bringing quality service. Government must be bringing value. Government cannot only be known for extracting value. I set up a business. All you want to do is charge me multiple TV and radio taxes from 2 local governments. I've seen this. I know a business that they brought it to me. I think I might even tweet about this. But 2 local governments are charging radio and TV tax. These people don't have radio and TV in their office, right? And it's constantly a way they just want to just take, as opposed to building capacity to give. And these are things that need to change.
All right, just quickly, because you mentioned the NSAS and people have brought that up, with the pictures and the videos. How do you think that affects your candidacy?
Listen, I've always stood on the side of the people. Way back when I was campaigning against genetic modified foods that Akinwumi Adesina was pushing into our agriculture and food system, to campaigning for health, history, to be brought back into our education system, to even Sunday Igboho standing up when Yoruba people were constantly being killed in Oyo and in different parts of in Ondo, to Akeredolu standing up for the people. See, that is what you must have, people that stand. You must, because governance is a two-way conversation. It cannot just be oppression and suppression and you're just taking it. If you keep taking it, government will start to think you are enjoying it. And that's the problem, and it will only get worse. So for me, NSAS was a group of people that said, it's enough. Because this had become a way of life where people were being brutalized by the police. And they said, it's enough. How much longer is this going to go on for? And that was legitimate. Now, how it was managed, how it was handled, and the aftermath of it is a different conversation. And I condemn the burning of buses, because guess what? We only gave these governments an opportunity to steal more money. Because when you look at how much they bought those buses for relative to how much they could have gotten for, you see that there's a huge lacuna in the difference in price. Right? And it breaks my heart, especially because I come from a legal judiciary family, to see how the court was burnt and all the amount of history that Lagos State has housed just lost.
So still on security, understanding that what happened during NSAS, it shed a lot of light where
Yes.
people started knowing more about the different arms of government and to what extent the governor might have, an influence and power. And people understood that, yes, the governor is called the chief security officer of the state, but may have little to no influence on the law enforcement. So in terms of security, insecurity in Lagos, what would you do if you get into that office? I mean, it is the same power, that the governor does have. So if there's a limit to how you can influence the law enforcement, what difference are you going to make?
If I heard, and best believe this, the governor has a say. The army cannot shoot at people without approval from the governor. It's not possible. And if the governor did not approve, the governor would have been on ground. You have to shoot me to shoot my people. That's a governor, right? Yeah, you are number one citizen for a reason, right? That's the first thing. Now, in terms of your question on security, first of all, we're going to formalize the community policing that already exists. I'll give you an example. You go to somewhere like Badia in Apapa or Jora, your phone gets missing. There are people you can call, and that phone will come back. So there's already a free flow of information that's going on. That must be formalized and brought into a local government system where they're collecting this information and then transmitting to a state command. And they must be incentivized. They must be formalized. They must be shown that they are an arm of government. Right? So that's one. We're also going to have intelligent, data-driven surveillance around the state. Whether it is drones that are going to be deployed at night at hotspots where a lot of nefarious activities are happening, that have night vision, and then give this intelligence to police to act on, right? And surveillance systems that gather data that also allow for people to know that they are being watched. So it serves as a deterrent to whatever movement you want to make. And these things are going to be easily accessible because to be part of the Commonwealth of Lagos, we must take your picture and your biodata, and there are a lot of incentives to be part of it, right? So it's going to be, I think, systematically. I'm not a project governor. It's about systems that tie into each other and allow for a sustainable city to be built. So another thing is getting rid of this Agbero situation. Now, it's deep. It's deep because for them to move up in life along the pecking order, they must be violent, right? They must be violent. They must be used to suppress elections. So you're a good boy if you've been used to scatter people in front of Elegush's palace or used to scatter people in front of Oniu's palace, right? You are rewarded. You move higher along the pecking order. Now, this is a system that must be destroyed. It must be flattened. And we must get these young men to be part of a productive system by giving them skills, by giving them a reason to believe in dignity of labor again, and giving them those incentives and welcoming them as stakeholders that are productive members of society. Once a lot of these things are done, we start to have a more secure Lagos, which is very important if we want to attract tourists to come in, which is very important if we want to increase our GDP. Lagos State needs to start to become a 16-hour state in the next 4 years, and the next 6 years a 24-hour state.
All right, I would have to let you go very quickly, but I want you to comment on our internally generated revenue in Lagos. In 2021, I believe it was over 700 billion naira. Yes. That's about 753 point something billion naira. And, sometimes when people take a look at Lagos being the fourth wealthiest city in Africa and the way of life of the people, the quality of life that the people are living, apart from the 1% of the 1%, people are saying this is antithetical to what the IGR is saying. Exactly. So if you get in, what are you addressing? How are you increasing the IGR? Is it a situation of increasing the IGR or better management?
Both. You see, you have a situation where all these monies are accumulated and you're just hearing it on paper. You're not seeing it in reality because all the developments that we are seeing, they're private sector led. Deep Sea Port that they just commissioned, private sector led. The train system they're talking about, they borrowed the money. The anything that they're clapping about, you see that is debt. So the question is, what are they using these monies for? What are they using this IGR for? How is it affecting and improving the lives of Lagosians? And these are things that we need to change. And that's why I talk about openness and transparency, publishing the accounts of Lagos State, directly telling the people this is what this money is used for. This is why we made this decision. This is how it's directly going to benefit your life. So we're going to plug the loopholes, but then we are going to open Lagos up so that there can be more inflows. For instance, Northern Foreshore, improving development, the increasing development that will allow for more revenue generation for the state, right? Improving efficiency in terms of markets, creating more roads that lead to markets to improve the amount of commerce that's being done there, also leads to more revenue for the state, right? As opposed to suffocating and suppressing businesses and still trying to take from them, we're going to make them create enabling environments and allow for them to flourish. And then the state also makes more money, right? And also creating a platform-led type of government that's transparent and accountable so that the private sector has trust in the system and can engage in public sector delivery of infrastructure. It doesn't have to be the government using money and borrowing money to do this and do that. The private sector can get involved. And they're a lot more efficient at doing it. Really, the government has no business in business.
Interesting. All right. Before you go, just one call because the phone lines have been blowing up. Lagos Talks, good afternoon. What's your name?
Good afternoon. You have it on the line.
All right. Very quickly, you have just 10 seconds.
10 seconds. So thank you very much. So, sorry, sir. You've been saying, I really appreciate all what you've been saying. Practically, looking at godfatherism in Lagos State, how do you beat it done? Because I see work. All what you've been saying is see work. Because policy-wise, or how do you beat them? Godfatherism. Let me just end it there.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the fact of the matter is, I'm in Labour Party. We have no godfathers in Labour Party, and this is the reason why I never joined the APC. All my political trajectory from COA party to PDP has been anti-APC, right? Because I cannot say any of all of this if I was under the APC, because you have all the godfathers, all the mini gods in that party that all the their interest will be taken care of first before the interest of Lagosians, right? And we see what happened to Ambody. A whole sitting governor was disgraced out of office because he was visionary and wanted to create a better life for the people of Lagos. So I'm coming from a platform that the people, the love of the people and the hope of the people are putting me in. I'm accountable to them and them only.
All right, it's 1:47. On that note, I will have to wrap this up. GRV, thank you very much. Thank you
so much. It was a really lovely conversation.
I appreciate it. And to everyone listening, thank you so much as well. The conversation still continues. Election Watch as we build up to the gubernatorial election this weekend. So just ensure that you stay tuned to Lagos Talks 91.3. Stick around.